Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Back to School webinar with Tennesseans for Student Success and TennesseeCAN. My name is Jessica Whitmill, and I'm the Policy and Outreach Manager at Tennesseans for Student Success. I'm also joined by Laura Hunt, the State Manager of Advocacy and Strategy at TennesseeCAN. We are excited today to host this timely discussion with our fantastic panel from across the state. Before we get started, I wanted to welcome everyone here and ask you to introduce yourself in the chat box. Additionally, I wanted to set some meeting norms. Please remain respectful of all panelists and guests and keep your mic muted until you're called upon. If you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box, and towards the end, we will have plenty of time for the panelists to address any questions. So when we scheduled this discussion, we didn't know how timely it would be, but yesterday the governor announced his plans for reopening schools. We'd like to give you all a brief overview before we get started, and Laura will also add the link to the chat box so you all can review that during the webinar as well. The governor's plan includes guidance on testing and quarantine procedures for schools, resources for virtual learning for parents, including a start of year checkpoint, which is a free optional assessment to measure student performance at the beginning of the year that'll help inform educators about student readiness for the year ahead. A $50 million investment for devices and hotspots. The Tennessee Department of Education will also be supporting students and schools with 250,000 devices. For teachers, every teacher will receive a PPE and cloth masks and a full year of disinfecting kits for their classroom. So this will have no cost on the teachers. Additionally, there'll be virtual professional learning opportunities for teachers and administrators to ensure appropriate information is provided for high quality education for all students. Now, before we get kicked off today, I hope everyone's had a chance to introduce themselves in the chat box, and I will turn over today's discussion to Laura.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see everyone on the call today. We have a great panel here today, and so I'd love to start off with Representative White, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Laura and Jessica. Appreciate being with you and everyone else. My name is Mark White, and my home is in Memphis. I've been in the state legislature now for 11 years. Dawn and I, Senator White, the other White on the phone, she's now in the Senate, but she was in the House for a few years, and we served together on the Education Committee. For the past 7 years, I've either been the sub-chairman or the full chairman of the House Education Committee, and been enjoying that. So just trying to keep up with all of the things that are going on and keep moving Tennessee forward when it comes to education. Thank you.
Thanks so much for being on, Representative White, and we'll kick it over to the other White.
Morning, I'm Dawn White, and I am a state senator that represents Rutherford County, and I'm happy to be here. A little bit about my background. I have a master's in education and an education specialist degree. I taught for 7 years before I started my own small business online. And I ran for the House when redistricting happened and the new lines were drawn and Rutherford County got a new seat. And so I came in 2013, and I had the honor and privilege of serving on education with Representative White. And Tennessee is very, very blessed to have Representative White as the chair of education. His heart and passion is 6 years serving with him on a committee. I saw his heart and his passion for education, and we are very, very blessed to have Representative White as chairman of education. And then, let's see, I've been in the Senate 2 years and enjoying my time in the Senate as well. So thank you for having me and invite me to this panel.
We're so happy to have you on, Senator White. Danny Song, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning. My name is Danny Song. I'm the founder and head of school of Believe Memphis Academy Charter School here in Memphis. I like seeing in the chat several of you are from Memphis, including Mr. White on the call. So it's an honor to be with you all today. Met Jessica a couple of months ago now via email/Zoom, which is how we're meeting people these days. So it's nice to meet each of you we are, I mean, I think the most current thing going on for us is that Believe Memphis Academy just started our 3rd year of operation, and we kicked off teacher training this week in a fully virtual setting. Being in Memphis, Shelby County Schools just announced on Monday that we'll be starting fully virtually, and I know there's a lot of parents on this call, and I know that is the foremost concern for all of us as we're trying to navigate this space. So I appreciate being here, and I'm grateful to be be on such a distinguished panel, and excited to answer any questions that you all have.
Thanks, Danny. Derek King.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Derek King. I'm the vice principal at Southwind High School here in Memphis. I'm starting my 11th year in education. It's crazy to say that, but yeah, starting year 11 in education, and currently at work in my office, working on our virtual learning plan, ACT, master schedule, all of that. So I'm happy to always talk about education. I've done a couple of these calls with Laura and the team during this quarantine, and yeah, just excited to have a conversation and see what questions people have and what insights other people have that we may not have gotten here in Memphis just yet.
Thanks, Derek. I know you dress for success every day at your job like that. Allison, kick it over to you.
Allison, me? I didn't know if I was the only Allison. Oh, okay. Hey, I'm Allison Simpson. I am a parent. I have 2 kids, 4 and 11. My oldest daughter goes to Nashville Classical Charter School here in Nashville, and I am the Communities and School Site Coordinator at Amuqui Elementary. I'm also the Parent Advisory Council, the PAC person for my daughter's school. Just been doing a lot of like parent advocacy work here in Nashville, and just advocating for kids to get a great education regardless of zip code. So that's who I am.
That's what we're about too. So thanks for being on, Allison. Last but not least, Laura Lavery.
Hi everyone, my name is Laura, and I will be going into my 8th year at Franklin Special School District. I teach Spanish in middle school. I have recently begun my journey as a Tennessee Ed Fellow this year, and I'm very passionate about educational technology and social emotional learning for my students, and involving community partnerships with my kids to improve student outcomes. And it's really great to meet everybody virtually.
Laura is Technology Laura on social media, and she has the coolest ideas for virtual learning if anyone wants to check it out. All right, well, thanks so much for all of our panel for being on, and please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box if you haven't already done so, and also ask any questions in the chat box as we go along. But we'll start it off today with our senator and representative. If y'all could both kind of go into more detail about the governor's reopening plan, and also some CARES Act funding and kind of what happened this past legislative session, if either of you want to jump in about those things.
Senator, do you want me to go first, or do you want to go?
Go, it's yours, sir.
Okay, wow. Thank you very much. If you can see the top of my desk, there's so many things going on right now. It's kind of hard to describe. Monday, I was in Nashville. We had a meeting with the Commissioner McSwin, the Commissioner's DOE, Governor Lee, and we had Ambassador Deborah Burks from the White House task force on the COVID issues and discussing back to school. It's really complicated. I keep thinking about, everybody knows the riddle from Kits, Cats, Sacks, Wives, how many were going to St. Ives? You know, the answer to that is 1, but that's not the answer in this particular riddle that we've got going on. With 1 million students, 147 school districts, 68,000 teachers, virtual versus being physically present, it's just a very complicated time for our state as well as a nation. I'm from Memphis. Our Shelby County schools are decided on August 31st they would start all virtual. I also represent a community called Germantown. They're doing K through 6 back at school, and then they're 7 through 12 I think 2 days a week, and the rest virtual. So, and it's like that, you know. And of course, we're rural versus urban, and one of the reasons, you know, the governor is tough to put out an edict on we would do all one thing is because we are a lot of rural communities are not under the same issues that communities like Memphis and Nashville, which has larger populations. Shelby County Schools has 100,000 students. Some school districts only have 5,000 or 6,000 students. So it's a big difference. But a few things that the governor put out, Executive Order 55 yesterday, is, you know, there is a lot of federal money coming into every state in our state. And I'm just trying to remember the figure for education. But the one yesterday, $81 million that we have that they're putting into, you know, giving directives on, like some are asking for, what is our decision tree? If we're doing virtual, when do we actually go back to a physical presence? And that's been the biggest challenge. And so the governor put out that as far as, you know, if you have a sick child, you got trying to find my note again. Right, here it is right here. You've got a 10-day sick window, a 14-day quarantine, contact tracing, giving directives to the different districts on that. Immunizations. Let me just throw this in, then I'm going to throw it over to Senator White to say a few things. But besides all the money, let me mention the money, $81 million, but a lot of it's going to helping our schools buy the protective equipment and things. There's a young lady that grew up across the street from me from child, and she went to the University of Alabama. This is an example. She's now teaching in a city down in Alabama, and I think 7th grade. And they were just told, you're on your own. And so she was needing facial masks and everything. So I had a supply here, so I sent her several hundred down there. Not happening in Tennessee. The state's come the money and sending the teachers protective equipment, sanitary supplies and things of that nature. And then I had one more thing I was going to mention, and I kept talking and I forgot about it. It come back to me. Senator White, you want to jump in?
Well, I think Representative White is correct by saying one size does not fit all for the state of Tennessee. Of course, we have rural areas of Tennessee and urban areas of Tennessee, and you know, in some of our rural areas, they don't even have broadband. They don't even have the access to high-speed internet to allow their students to be online. And, you know, as a former kindergarten teacher, I don't see how you would ever have a kindergartner sit in front of a computer for 6 hours a day. That, you know, it's hard enough to get them on the rug for 20 minutes a day for story time. So, I mean, to have a young child sit in front of a computer for all day, it's just not feasible. And so I think it is totally, and you know, I'm an advocate, just like Representative White is, of parent choice. And I think the parent knows what's best for that child. You know, if my child was born with a lung disease, a heart condition, had childhood cancer, no, I would not want my child to go back. They're in a high risk category. But, you know, studies have shown that children, you know, if they get it, is not going to be as severe as someone that's an adult at risk. And so I think for a lot of reasons, and, you know, safety, for a lot of children that live in a home that may not have a safe environment, they need that school. They need to go and get a hot meal at lunchtime. That may be their only meal. You know, in some of our areas of Tennessee, and a lot of our areas in Tennessee, that happens. And, you know, whether that child is in an abusive home, they need that outlet to, you know, for a teacher or a counselor, because teachers are amazing and care so much about a child, you know, to see the signs of maybe abuse or neglect, to report it. And, you know, if they're at home, they're not getting the socialization they need from other children as well. So, you know, I am a parent choice advocate, as I said, and I believe the parent needs to decide if their child needs to go back, which I believe schools do need to open up, but a parent also needs the choice of another option, whether that's online or homeschooling or whatever that option is, if they do not feel safe sending their child back to school.
If I could jump back in real quick for 30 seconds, remember what I was going to say. One of the things that I read where it's down 40% is we have always required that our elementary children have certain vaccines before they go back to school. And because of the virtual, maybe some parents are not doing that. I think it's very important that they do that. And that is still a requirement, even if you're virtual, to have all your shots, your vaccines. One reason, I was talking to a doctor the other day, and as you know, all our young people, and we included when we were at that age, we got the MMR shot vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella. And one of the reasons it could be, this is a hypothesis, that our younger children aren't getting it as older, because we lose that vaccine in us as we grow older, is having a vaccine, which is an antivirus shot. It also helps with other viruses. And so as our children go back to school, make sure that the school districts are enforcing getting the regular vaccines, because I think that is helping our young age population by having these vaccines in their system. And this has been around for 100 years, and they're very effective and very safe.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that in different school systems, there have been different responses to what parents are wanting to choose. So, for example, in Memphis, I was shocked to learn that 80% of the students' parents picked virtual learning for their children, whereas in Knox County and in different parts of the state, only a third picked virtual.
Right, and in Germantown, which is a community that butts up to the Shelby County School System, one of the municipal districts, their parent survey was like 90+% wanting to go back. So yeah, it's kind of not for sure those numbers.
I think we have some questions for our school leaders, Danny and Derek. As principals, what exactly is your school choosing to do? I know in Shelby County they're currently doing virtual, and there's no chance of them going back in person at the moment. So how are you adjusting to the virtual learning for the fall, and how are you preparing for better virtual learning experience than it was in the spring when it was just thrown upon you?
So our district has done a really good job of setting up PD for our teachers. So there's been a list and a menu of options for teachers to attend since the beginning of the summer. And so it's been great for our teachers to be able to get training on Microsoft Teams, which is our kind of standard platform. But also we've looked at some work with Discovery Ed. There have been a lot of trainings and mock lessons done. So we feel pretty good about that. At our school individually, we've actually spent time as the admin team working on our curriculum maps and looking at how that aligns with the way we typically lesson plan to see what changes need to be made. And so we are actually going through the work like teachers would, so that we can plan a more useful PD time for once teacher days start back. And so that's been eye-opening for us, because there are just some assumptions and some things you take for granted when you get the proximity with kids and you get to have a physical space and they can put their hands on things. So just thinking about how we integrate resources and, don't have crazy links everywhere, and can also get the teacher to a point where he or she can toggle a screen and present a lesson. So that's what we're just thinking through. And then also how to plan for instructional supervision from the admin perspective, and being able to monitor with 1,600 kids and about 75 teachers and 100 staff. It's a lot to manage. So it's also thinking about our systems and how we make sure that we're getting that time in. And the last thing I'll say is, and this one hasn't been talked about a lot, but also trying to figure out ways to make sure our counselors can get contact with our kids, with advising for college, with dealing with all the social emotional trauma and confusion that comes with this. And so we're also thinking about how we integrate our support staff, who matter just as much as our teachers, to make sure our kids are still getting the full experience that they would in our building.
Thanks, Eric. And thank you, Laura, for the question. So I think the question was around how are we making this decision on whether to offer a virtual or in-person option. I want to first, like Representative and Senator White mentioned before, and Mr. King said, it's an incredibly complicated set of factors that we have to think about when making this decision. But I want to start with a personal, just where I am as a person. So the reason that I'm at home today is not because I want to be. I'm at home today because over the weekend I found out that I came in first-degree contact with somebody who tested positively for coronavirus. I've been working at the school previously before that. And right now in Memphis, we have 18,000 active cases. There's almost a 10% positivity rate. And so to the question that Ms. Murray asked about the risk factor, and to the statistics that you pointed out, Laura, of 70% of families in Memphis choosing to be virtual, the context that we're in right now is an incredibly concerning one. And I think that's furthermore, while absolutely there are studies that show schools can be safe, and there are studies that show children may have a stronger immunity to this, when I found out that I had first-degree contact, and that first-degree contact actually came from my children's babysitter, it was terrifying. To think that my children may have been exposed to COVID-19 and that I might be exposed to COVID-19. We made the decision actually 2 weeks before Shelby County Schools announced that we would be opening school fully virtually. And we made this decision because we believe what we see around from the very top, what we see around our nation is right now an advocacy of leadership. Where we're not making decisions in decisive and clear ways, that is causing a lot of confusion for, I think it trickles all the way down, and the people who are affected most by this are parents and children. We did a survey as well, and 70% of our children, our families, said they wanted to opt for virtual. I think the statistics you named, Laura, about the differences between Memphis and Germantown versus Knoxville, I think one fact of the matter that we can't deny, and a fact of the matter that we can't ignore when it comes to this virus, is that this virus, like many other pernicious systems of our society and our country, this virus disproportionately hurts African American communities. And with a district that serves a 70% African American community, I think we have to be cognizant of that fact. Not only that, somebody also said in the text and the chat box about teachers. That was our second group of people that we had in mind when we made this decision. If we can imagine we are a small school, we have 45 staff members. And I think like Ms. Simpson was saying, Allison from Nashville Classical, we're a similar school to that. And I think if we, in our 45 staff members, just again, quick anecdote, the leadership team was in the building 2 weeks before our staff started. When we started with our leadership training, we didn't last a week before one person had to quarantine because they came in contact. And then the second week, we came in contact. And the next day, our director of operations came in contact. We've been quarantining on and off with just our team of 9 people in the building for the last 2 weeks. So if we extend that to 45 staff members with 300 children, there was no way that we saw a path forward where we could have a really consistent learning environment. And to what Senator White was saying about her being a kindergarten teacher, this is my 13th year in education. I've taught primarily middle school and elementary school. What I need most in my classroom for my children to be successful is consistency. And if you imagine the scenario where in Memphis, where we have this 10% positivity rate, children starting school, and then someone in that classroom being exposed, bringing it into the school, or developing symptoms while they're in school, because we see that symptoms sometimes don't develop till 5 to 7 days after contact. You're infectious 1 to 3 days before you ever show symptoms. So by the time a child with symptoms has come to the school, that child's been infectious for 3 days. And then having to close down that classroom, potentially the entire school, and that happening on a regular basis, it would have been impossible for us to have a consistent environment for our teachers to thrive, which would have made it impossible for our students to thrive. And so when we made the decision to go virtual, what it did was it provided a clear focus point for us of we're gonna make virtual learning the best it possibly can this semester. Luckily with our spring, the suddenness of the spring, we had to innovate really quickly then. But now we're in a position where we can plan for it. And I believe when we're given the time and the space to plan for it, we can execute this really effectively. we're looking into several programs. We have been in partnership with not only the district, but also national organizations like Relay Graduate School for Education. We're looking at practices that are happening in larger charter management networks across the country, as well as working with consultants who specialize in literacy instruction. So what we've been able to put together is we do have a 6.5-hour school day planned, but it's going to be broken up. We're going to be offering music enrichment as well as PE throughout the week. We're going to be offering a mix of asynchronous, which means it's pre-recorded lessons that parents can view with their children at different times, and some synchronous lessons. And the primary focus of synchronous lessons is going to be small group instructions, where really it's about building community and that connection among students as well as the teachers.
Danny, thanks so much for all of that information about what you guys are doing to take that extra step to provide those enriching classes like, you know, music and art and just all the safety protocols that your school has been able to do. I'd like to turn it over to Laura, who's a teacher in Franklin Special Schools, and have her talk a little bit about her experience in preparing for her classroom and integrating technology in the way that she does so well, and maybe some advice for parents and teachers as they're looking to school virtually this fall.
When we started virtual learning in March, I definitely placed social emotional learning as a top priority for me and my students, and I really wanted to connect my students and their families with me. So some of the things that I did is I sent them virtual postcards just to check on them weekly, and they would write me back in snail mail. I created birthday cards for them. I hosted porch poetry. I think it was very important to show my face, so I used a lot of platforms like Flipgrid, and I would say, like, how about your pet jumps on the Zoom call, and just kind of make them feel connected to their peers and me. And a lot of the parents were working at home, so they would wave and say hi. And I think it's important to be open and willing to try the new technology, because we have to be creative as educators to reach our students in multiple ways. So it's a mindset thing for me. Like, I'm going to try to integrate these new platforms to reach many different learners. And then the next day I'm going to keep trying. We're going to work through that together. So a lot for me is just continuing to be positive to my students and getting them excited for learning. I'm happy to see them on the Zoom calls, and if I wasn't hearing a lot from them, then I would go and send an email and a follow-up call. I think a lot of the parents were frustrated when they weren't having a lot of contact with the school. It was just like, here's your packets for 9 weeks. So making personal connections is very important to build relationships and trust. And since I serve middle school students, I found that beneficial for me. And then another thing that I want to empower other teachers to do is to check on your colleagues, because there are a lot of things people are dealing with and they need to feel supported too. So if you are really good at integrating this technology, or you have some other creative techniques that are working for your students, to reach out and be open and supportive, because a lot of people, I think, we're just overwhelmed, and to know that they're cared for, to me, was the most top priority. And to introduce your new material coming forward, since we are going virtual, in a positive way, because I think when students see that you are frustrated or nervous, it might carry over to them. So I just try to we're in this together, and keep building relationships while teaching your content, obviously, and connect with your colleagues, because I think now more than ever we need to have strong support systems at the school, and seek first to understand people rather to be understood, because we need to listen a lot from the parents and meet them where they are.
Thanks, Laura.
Technology.
Thanks, Laura. I think you have great ideas, and especially I think it's important, like you said, to share with other teachers as well, because once you have a great idea, you definitely need to share it. Allison, I want to jump over to you. As a parent, can you kind of talk about the experience of virtual learning with your child in the spring, and then kind of the way that you're weighing decisions about sending your child back to school this fall, and what other parents in your community are saying?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, my daughter, she goes to Nashville Classical. So we decided to exercise our options as far as school. So my situation is not like other people's situation because our school was very fortunate enough to have resources to be able to send out to every student. So for me in the spring, virtual learning went very good or was very successful for us. So her school emailed, well, they had a schedule starting at like 8 o'clock in the morning, going all the way to, I want to say like 2. So they had like a dance break incorporated in there, and they had like enrichment, recess, and different things like that. And so they mailed every student like a packet of information. So it had math, it had ELA, we have French at our school, so it had like French lessons. Her teacher would call me every day, which that got to be too much because I didn't want to talk to her teacher every day. And so they ended up dialing it back to getting a call once a week, which was perfectly fine. I appreciated that, and I let her teacher know that I appreciated it, but I think calling us every day was a little bit much. I think the most successful thing, and I think if anybody would like to learn from a school and what they're doing, our school is very open with communication, and they welcome a lot of parent input. And so they do like a lot of surveying, they do robocalls, like our head of schools will call parents, our teachers will call parents. And so I think they were very welcoming when it came to like the input that we had and kind of some of the stressors that we had. And so they did a lot to kind of ease those things. So our spring semester was pretty successful. I have no complaints about that. And then they also had like weekly Zoom calls on Fridays where the kids could get on and see their teachers and then see the kids that were in their grade. And then we had community meeting. So at our school, community meeting is this big thing that we do every Friday where all the grades come together and they do like their class cheers and things like that. So we had like a school-wide Zoom call community meeting. So as far as my concerns about sending her back in the fall, well, as of right now, until September, we're doing virtual learning. Now, if I have to end up sending her back to the building, if I have the option to choose to stay at home, I would prefer to do that. I work at a school, so if I actually have to go back into the building, then I won't have that option, which kind of sucks. And so going to your other question of things that I've heard parents' concerns of is a lot of my friends, they don't work in schools. And then I have some friends that live in like other areas where they have to go back to work, but their kids have to stay home. So they're trying to navigate that. So I know that's been the biggest concern of, well, what is the school district or whoever going to do about the fact that I have to go to school or I have to go to work and my kid has to be at home doing virtual learning. So I think I may have answered all your questions. But yeah, that's just some of the things. Oh, and then also, I'm sorry. What did you say? That's
I'm sorry.
And then just, I know like with the school that I work at Amuqui Elementary. It's in Madison. We're a priority school. And so a lot of our families, we have about a 45% population of Hispanic families. And so there's a language barrier. And so a lot of those families are having trouble navigating the online system. Even yesterday, we had a Zoom call for our open house. And so trying to have our principal talk and then have an interpreter come in and translate that information, it's been very, very difficult. And so that's another concern of some of our families. So really just trying to come together and really work together to kind of break down some of those barriers has been something that we've been working towards as a school.
Thank you so much, Allison. I know that there's a lot of questions in the chat box, and we'd love to start by opening up for questions. If you'd like to ask a question, put it in the chat box, and then as we see them roll in, Laura and I will call them out and say, hey, Jessica, can you, elaborate on that if you'd like? Or if you don't want to be, talking, we can address the question. But we'd love for this to be kind of like a discussion as much as you can virtually. I know we just got a question from Catherine Vaughn, and she asked, how is teacher stress being addressed? And I think this is a great question for all of our panelists, and whoever would like to jump on in and address that question, that would be great.
So here, we've been discussing just, how do we even set up teacher return in terms of just returning to work, not back to the building, obviously, but thinking about, how we communicate the expectations. Like there's still this level of like, you got to be a professional. Things have got to get done. Kids need to be taught. We're trying to get credits and move to a graduation, but still, it's just got to be said differently, right? So we talk about SEL for kids all the time, but adults are dealing with a lot too. SCS is currently thinking through if it's possible to allow our teachers, if they want to come back in the building to teach, since no kids will be here, if their kids will be allowed to come with them. That hasn't been decided yet, but that's a conversation that's out there. And just how do you, there's also like a telecommuting or telework agreement being kind of drafted up for teachers to be able to decide. But I think for us, we said as an admin team, we just have to come from the perspective of we're really trying to figure this out together. A lot of the top-down hierarchical type things just cannot happen the same way because there's just too much uncertainty. And we know here, we have a great mix of people in our staff with a lot of folks who could have retired this year because of this, and also some brand new teachers, folks who are new to our school, new to Memphis, new to education altogether. So with that mix of people, plus the variety of skill sets, we've just got to really figure out as an admin team, how can we meet the needs of all of our people and take care of them? So we don't know. We don't have an answer yet, but we're definitely thinking about it every day.
Thanks, Mr. King. If I can follow up on that, I think like as a former teacher and as a current educator, the things that provide us stress the most, I would say, and I say us, as I believe everybody in our building is a teacher. I think everyone who works in education is a teacher. I think three things that can create the most amount of stress is when there's no clarity, when there is a feeling of isolation, or when there is a lacking of support or resources. So the way that we're trying to address that is first creating clarity on what is the teacher's responsibility. I think teaching, like nursing, can be a profession where you're kind of expected to hold the weight of the world on your shoulders. And I think it is a profession that, and I don't think that's right. I don't think that is something that should be expected of teachers, that they need to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders without the proper resources to do so. I think our teachers are amazing. I think they're incredibly intelligent. And I think they're incredibly hardworking and they're incredibly passionate. But I think we sometimes as a system, and I talk about public education in general, as a system can take advantage of those values and virtues that our teachers bring, knowing that our teachers will bear the burden when we ask them to. So we as a society sometimes ask our teachers to bear burdens that I think are unfair for them to bear. So we as a school are thinking through how we can provide clarity to eliminate that stress of what is your role as a teacher? What do you need to do? What does your 8 to 5 look like? Because you have children at home, you have families at home. You can't just be online the whole day, right? And then if you are working from home, how does the mix of, like Ms. Simpson was talking about, your own childcare plan to take into effect? So we're trying to have an individualized approach of what our teachers are able to give. Some of our teachers who have children, who have daycare centers open to them, really want to just come in the building. They want that separation from home and work, and they say, I want to come and I want to work in my office. And so we're going to create a safe space where there's limited contact with others. You come into your classroom, we're going to have separated bathrooms, separated what would typically be teacher workroom materials, making sure that those are separated. The second thing that I think creates stress is the feeling of isolation when you're feeling alone. And I think that is exacerbated for everybody in this context. So how do we create community intentionally within our building and across our staff? And then the last thing that I mentioned is the lacking of support and resources. When I feel like I don't have what I need to be successful, it's going to be really stressful. So how do we make sure that our teachers do have what they need to execute on their priorities, which not only is it PPE and not only is it literal materials, but it's also the time that they need to be successful. It's also the space that they need to be successful. And so those are the ways that our school is trying to address teacher stress.
Thanks so much, Danny. I feel like I feel those points too. Self-isolation and all that. Helen, I believe you had a question in the chat if you want to ask that. Helen Miller Wilson.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I was just concerned about whether teachers had a choice with virtual learning as opposed to in-house if they felt uncomfortable with the virtual learning. I mean, we've been trained on it, but of course, you know, it's a trial run the first, couple of weeks or whatever, and a lot of times, you don't have the support of your other teachers around you to help you, get your gears running, so to speak, or get on, get what you need as far as this information you may have had on the platform as far as teams. What are these alternatives to that, if there's any?
Miss Wilson, are you asking what is the alternative to teachers who don't feel comfortable on the virtual platform?
Yes, I am.
Okay. For us, given where we are as a context and as a city right now, our only option is virtual. But what we are trying to do for our teachers is to specify their role. So we have instructors who provide the actual synchronous instruction for our students. But then we have a support team, and some of our teachers are being put into that support category for a couple of reasons. It could be that their childcare situation or their personal situation doesn't allow them to have synchronous instruction on a regular basis. But also what we know is someone on the chat said the families need this too. Families need the support and the resources and connection. And so we have a support team of teachers whose job is to primarily reach out to families and to see what families need and to make sure that we get flagged up for whether that's tech issues, whether that's low level things like connectivity issues, or whether that is higher level barriers such as a family who's not having trouble meeting the basic needs of the child for whatever reason, whether it's a child who's experiencing homelessness, whether it's a child who is going between kind of, one apartment to another house to another place and trying to figure out how we can best support those things. So we're offering some of our teachers opportunities to work on that side of our school and not just the instructional side of virtual learning.
Okay. Thank you. Sounds good.
Thanks, Danny, for answering that question. Allison B., I know you might have a question or had a different experience as a parent than Simpson did.
Yes, all of the above. So my name is Allison Black. I am in Nashville as well. I go to Metro Nashville Public Schools. The spring for us was really hard and very different. Essentially, at first they said, here's a bunch of stuff, and it kind of went from famine to feast, if you will. Here's a bunch of stuff disseminated to all parents, and they wouldn't let teachers or administration or anybody reach out to the families until they had a coordinated effort. So we went about the first 4 to 6 weeks hearing nothing from anybody and just printing off these sheets online that weren't grade specific. They were K through 2. Then they kept coming out with plans for like 3rd grade and up, but they never really did anything outside of the packets for K through 2. And they really just put a ton on the parents to do everything or nothing. Basically, whatever. Now I keep hearing, and again, this is just my personal experience with my school. It's different from Miss Simpson or somebody else. But, you know, by now, when school starts in less than a week, I would have expected to have a schedule. I would have expected for my teacher for the upcoming school year to reach out to me. I would have expected to have my credentials to log into Schoolology or whatever the heck I'm supposed to log into. I have none of those things. We do have a town hall on Thursday, but that just to me as a planner, and here's my second point, as a parent and a parent that works in the home, so I am still going to work. I'm fortunate that I get to work from home, but I am working. How am I expected? There is no support for parents working in the home that, you know, have to help a kindergartner or a first grader or a pre-K with the Flipgrid and the Schoolology, and we still have our work stuff to do too, and make sure that they're in for the synchronous learning, then make sure that they're ready for the asynchronous learning, then do how many hours worth of homework. It's just, it really feels still to me at this point like it's very slushy. And as much as I appreciate Dr. Battle and MNPS, they haven't been very forthcoming with information. My school hasn't been as forthcoming with information as I would like. And, you know, I'll just leave it at, I really think that it feels at this point like it's rushed, and we really should have looked at, you know, possibly pushing the start date back. Like, I don't understand why anybody won't consider that as an option, and eliminating fall break and eliminating some of these other things to have adequate time to get ready and get prepared and have those resources in place to help parents. That's it. Sorry, that was loaded.
Thanks, Allison.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Allison.
I was just gonna say, again, like I said, I work for communities and schools, and my school that I work at is at Amuqui Elementary. And so just to like answer your question, we honestly don't have it all together, just in full transparency, and maybe they might not want me to say that, but just at our faculty meeting, we're still navigating things. We're still trying to figure things out. We still don't have a lot of the tools that we need in order to teach our students when school starts. So I know that our school is reaching out to parents and just asking for just some patience and some grace. I know that each one of our students are gonna have like a, well, I forgot the term they use, but basically like a staff person or an administrator that is assigned to that family to help them navigate the virtual learning process, and just also to do some like SEL stuff. So that should be coming. If it hasn't already come, then I suggest that you reach out to your school, or if you know your child's teacher. I know yesterday we had an open house, so our students now know their child's teacher, so they're able to reach out to them. But in all honesty, I mean, we really don't have everything together. Like this came as a shock to all of us as well. So just as much as you're learning, we're learning too. And so, you know, at my school, we're just letting our parents know that we're here as a support to lean on us, and you know, to just give us some grace, because we're just basically trying to figure it out just like everybody else.
Right, but then it begs the question, why not push it back? Why is everybody so stuck on this? We have to start. No, take the time and get it right, so that, you know, you've had time, but take the time to get it right. And then the other thing is, you know, I'm looking at the comments too, because a lot of people are saying you're articulating exactly how I'm feeling. Like, have one unified response, have one unified schedule for the entire school, and say, on this day, teachers will reach out to you. On this day, and not all this hodgepodge, because the other thing is, and I'm sure you know this, Allison, being plugged into all the communities too, like you see, well, you know, this elementary school reached out 2 weeks ago, but I'm at a different one and I haven't heard yet, and I'm less than a week away from school, and I'm trying to give grace, absolutely, but the thing is, they have to be cognizant of everybody's time, and that includes ours, and our inability to make arrangements because we don't have enough information to make arrangements.
Trust me, I understand. I've done a lot of emailing to my school board member and a lot of emailing to Dr. Battle and lots of calls. So I get it. And they have the information because, you know, parents and I have actually shared like other parents' concerns. So, but yeah, as you know, Allison, I mean, sometimes Metro just, you know, it's hard.
Thanks, Allison. I appreciate both of your perspectives because I think you've had different experiences, even both in Nashville. So I appreciate that. DK, I understood you had a question about testing and assessments for the representative and senator.
So yeah, I wanted to just, and this may be a little bit over the parents' heads, but for our legislators at the school level, I know districts have been requesting for testing to be canceled, and seems like those have been denied or at least ignored up to now. And so the way that we think about it here at the high school with decision making is we're still making it around the accountability model. So if we're thinking about ready graduates and ACT and college readiness and graduation rate and WIDA testing for our ESL students and attendance, which is also going to be a major thing with funding and also just accountability. But just wondering if there's any update from the Ed Commissioner about talks with the accountability model and how schools will be assessed, and because I think that also drives how we make decisions, especially with end of course testing. A lot of our decisions begin there, but if the pressure of testing isn't there, then we also may be able to support our teachers and our kids differently.
Laura, I can address that. Thank you for that question. And of course, that's been ever since day one that since the kids were officially out of school for the year was already out, but officially out for the summer. Then that question when we start back. To answer that question, first of all, I wouldn't worry. Really, there is only one body that can waive the 10 ready test or the accountability test. That is the General Assembly. The governor can't do it. The Commissioner of Education cannot do that. It's a legislative issue. Plus, we're under the federal guidelines of ESSA and all that, which requires accountability. But from your perspective, I would say, and I get Senator White to weigh in on this also, I wouldn't worry about that if things continue to go in the way they are. Now, we're out of session. We finished session for the year on June 19th. And that's scheduled to go back in with the new General Assembly in January of 2021. So officially nothing could really be done until then anyway. We'd have to take on the issue. We did that this year on March 19th, and we recessed for the 2 months when the COVID hit pretty bad. And we waived everything for this year in the 180-day school requirement. If things continue to go like they are, I would say that will probably happen again. Now, I've talked to a lot of districts. They would still like to keep it maybe as a diagnostic tool to see where our kids, how much lost and how much they've learned for the year they have been in. But some want it, some want to keep it as diagnostics. But I would get back in school and just start out without. Don't worry about that. I know you kind of want to know on the front end. But with the legislature out, we may go back in special session sometime in August at the governor's request. That's the only way we can go back in. And if things are at a boiling point at that time, well, we may have to address it. We can. But Senator White, would you like to weigh in on that also?
Absolutely. Of course, in January when we go back, new bills, that's when new bills can be filed. And just like Representative White has said, this is unprecedented for us as well as y'all, as for the whole state. And I see there will probably be some bills on helping teachers and administrators and principals and school districts will be filed in January when we go back. And that will be the time that it is addressed. And like Representative White says, I see that if we cannot go back and it's all virtual online, yes, there will be talks and considerations for that at that time in January when new legislation is able to be filed. In special session, it will be very difficult to file new legislation because we're called back. The governor calls you back for like a topic, and it is actually, we're getting, probably if we get called back, it will be for the COVID Relief Act liability that says that schools and nonprofits and small businesses and large businesses are not held accountable. And I think that will help the school districts as well, to avoid, any lawsuits or anything like that. So that's what will probably be called back for special session. But in January, I do see a lot of legislation filed to help the education establishment and systems and everyone above in education, to help with all of the problems that we are facing because of this time.
Thank you so much, Senator White and Chairman White, for answering some of those questions that came in regarding special session and testing for students. I know there's a lot of robust discussion happening in the chat box right now, and I love it, but we are coming up on time. So I wanted to offer for you all to email either me or Laura Hunt any of these questions, and we would love to either connect you with the resources that we know about or any of the panelists. So please keep them coming. I'm copying and pasting them as we speak. And I'm going to put our email addresses in the chat box as well, so you can email us directly with any of these questions. Additionally, we are going to do a survey after this that will be in your email box, along with the governor's reopening plans and other resources that Laura Hunt and I put together that you might find helpful about balancing remote work as a parent, and additional online learning resources. And also Chairman White wrote a fantastic op-ed that we're going to highlight in those resources as well about the need for technology and rural broadband. Laura Hunt, do you have anything else to add or any of our panelists?
I just appreciate our whole panel for participating, and I think it was a really good discussion. I hope that everyone on the panel got something out of it, and all of our participants. We thank you so much for coming.
Great comments on the chat box, and reading all of them, and it just I just hope we can get past this soon, because there's a lot of issues and there's no easy answers. But I appreciate you inviting me today.